are you, Kevin?" I hadn't seen my grandson Kevin since he was in elementary school, but I was sure. Kevin must be a 10th grader now, so the age matches up. However, I didn't recognize the child he was carrying on his back.
"Grandma, it's been a long time."
Tears distorted my vision. I didn't know what to say, torn between the painful sight and the joy of reunion. The grown-up Kevin, unlike me, never showed his emotions openly.
"Please, let us stay tonight."
I didn't know what had happened, but there must be a reason they were here, underdressed on such a snowy day. How hard must it have been to walk this distance in the snow, carrying a child on his back? The child on his back was shivering. His hands and feet were reddish-black from the cold, and his lips were turning blue. Kevin's legs were trembling, barely able to hold the child any longer. I was about to nod in agreement, as if to say, "Of course."
"Don't be ridiculous. I can take care of that kid."
Stomping loudly, my husband Fred, who should have been watching TV in the back of the house, came to the entrance. He seemed to have overheard our conversation. Even I, who had been with him for so long, flinched at his reaction, so a high schooler like him must have been terrified. But then,
"I see,"
he said, with a wry smile. It was a hollow smile, twisting only his mouth, as if everything was as he expected. "My name is Olivia. I live a relaxed life in a suburb a bit away from the city center. I'm in my late 60s now, and since my husband Fred has retired, we're living on our pension. Fred has always been extremely stubborn and difficult. When he was working, there seemed to be a lot of conflicts and trouble. But those who knew him well understood that Fred was just awkward. He's always hated anything dishonest, and once he made up his mind, he rarely changed it. He was also terrible at expressing his emotions. Back then, I knew that Fred was more stubborn and awkward than others, so I often stepped in to smooth things over. Although I wasn't as competent in my job as he was, I was good at socializing. In a way, we were like oil and water, but we naturally got along. From there, we developed a give-and-take relationship, eventually dating and getting married. After we married, we quickly had a son. I think even the stubborn Fred was pouring his love into him in his own way. Thanks to that, our son Mark grew up well and now has a son, Kevin. We thought the peak of happiness would continue, but it didn't turn out that way. We've become estranged from Mark since a few years ago. A big fight between Fred and Mark was the start of the rift. I would usually stay neutral, but this time I had to side with Fred, so I haven't seen my son for years. That's also why I haven't been able to see Kevin. I dearly miss him, my first grandchild, but there's probably nothing I can do. All this is probably because of Mark's married life. Mark had been dating a girl named Anna since his student days. Anna lived nearby, and our families were close, so Fred and I truly blessed their marriage. I remember Fred's face brightening up like a different person when Kevin was born, lifting his grandson in his arms. I think it was around the time Kevin started elementary school that Anna began talking to us about Mark frequently.
Mark's been coming home late. He's often working overtime and on weekends.
I was struck by Anna's genuine concern for Mark. With a young child at home, Mark's overtime and weekend work must have been incredibly stressful for her. My husband was a workaholic too, and it was terribly hard. That's why I could deeply understand Anna's feelings. I also reached out to Mark several times. My concern for Mark was no different. Working too hard can break you physically, and if the company is that bad, considering reporting to the appropriate authorities should be on the table. That's what I advised. Before I finished speaking, Mark sighed dramatically and shouted, "Times have changed since you and Dad's days. Don't interfere. I'm doing things my way." From his tone, I realized the company wasn't forcing the overtime and weekend work on him. What was going on? He used to complain about our father always working when he was young. He never seemed that work-driven, seeing work merely as a means to earn money and live. Anna knew this well, which is probably why she confided in me. My concern turned into suspicion from that day on. Sure enough, my unease grew over time. Then, soon after, I received shocking news. Anna died. Tearful calls from Anna's parents reached me, informing me of the tragic news. Anna was hit by a truck while wandering aimlessly on the highway. She was walking in a non-pedestrian area at night, unnoticed by the truck driver. Anna was serious and gentle, so she wouldn't recklessly cross a highway. At least, that's what I think. I later learned that she had been absent-minded for some time before the accident. Her parents mentioned receiving distressing calls from her, occasionally sounding like screams. Hearing this, my blood ran cold. It was said that Mark was having an affair. Anna was aware that the other woman was Molly, an office worker at Mark's workplace. Why she was in such a dangerous place remains unclear. However, Anna's parents believed that the shock of Mark's affair drove her to neurosis. After ending the call, I remained stunned for a while. Receiving a message from Fred about heading to the hospital, I finally snapped back to reality. By the time I arrived, Fred, who had left work early, was already at the hospital. At the hospital, there were only Anna's parents and Kevin, who was being embraced by them. Of course, the notification of the accident was first sent to Mark, her husband, but it was said that there was no contact from him. Then the message reached Anna's parents, and finally, at the very end, it seems they managed to get in touch with Mark. Even though Mark's office was much closer to the hospital than our house, he was the last to arrive. Without any sign of hurry or panic.
What have you been doing?
Fred exploded at Mark after hearing about the affair and other circumstances. I had never seen him so furious. Yet, Mark was defiant.
I cheated. But Anna's death was an accident, right? It's not my fault. If anything, it's because of Anna.
He blamed the root cause on Anna not paying attention to him after Kevin was born. Once a child is born, parenting becomes the priority. But for Mark, the only son and always the priority at home, he couldn't accept that someone else was being prioritized, even if it was his own son. That's why he couldn't prioritize his son in his life, leading Kevin not to be very attached to him. This vicious cycle made him feel like he had no place at home. In front of the late Anna, Mark yelled that her neurosis was her own fault. At his irresponsible words, Anna's parents broke down in tears, and Fred was almost at the point of hitting him. I could only calm them down and soothe Kevin, who started crying even harder at the sight of the adult's behavior. In that moment, seeing my son's state and feeling powerless, I was overwhelmed with a sense of inadequacy. Thus, a definitive rift formed between us and Mark. We insisted that either Anna's parents or we should take Kevin in, but Mark was unyielding. Though he confessed to the affair at the hospital, there was no further evidence, and since the confession wasn't recorded, Mark's infidelity remained unproven. I was terribly worried about Mark's selfish behavior. Hoping to be of some help, I discreetly gave Kevin a piece of paper with a map to our house and our contact information. It's a bit of a walk from their house to ours, but it's better than nothing. If nothing else, that's fine. And so, we parted ways. Later, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had remarried Molly. Apparently, she is about 10 years younger than Mark. Rumors even said that Molly knew Mark was married when they started their relationship. I was worried about Kevin's relationship with them. I visited Mark's house alone a few times, but it was always dark, and no one answered the doorbell. After several attempts, I had to give up to avoid being reported as a suspicious person. It's been years since I've seen Kevin. Even as the days go by, these old memories keep coming back to me. Even now, sipping hot chocolate, I think of Kevin. He used to enjoy the hot chocolate I made. I wonder if he has grown up, how his life and family relationships are. All I can do is worry. While bringing the mug to my lips, I look outside. A cold wave has hit our area today, turning the view from the window completely white. The surroundings are already engulfed in night and bitterly cold. I'll probably need to shovel snow tomorrow. Honey, it looks like we'll need to shovel snow tomorrow morning. I was about to discuss the snow shoveling with Fred, who was watching TV in front of the fireplace, when the doorbell rang. Fred and I looked at each other. On such a snowy night, we had no idea who could be visiting us. With a bit of fear, I slid open the front door to find a high school-aged boy carrying a small child on his back. I stared intently at their unusual appearance. The boy wore a slightly rumpled white shirt with just the top of a school uniform jacket and worn sweatpants. The small child was dressed in a t-shirt, a light hoodie suitable for fall, and shorts. Both had bright red hands and feet, and there was a thin layer of snow on their heads and shoulders. Long footprints stretched from the pristine white garden to the road beyond. It seemed they had walked to our house in this attire. Then, looking at the boy's face, I gasped. Are you Kevin? I hadn't seen Kevin since he was in elementary school, but I was certain. The corners of his eyes drooped like Anna's, and his nose was just like Mark's. Kevin should be a 10th grader now, so the age was right. However, I didn't recognize the child he was carrying.
Grandma, long time no see.
Indeed, the high school-aged boy was Kevin. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know what to say, torn between the painful sight and the joy of reunion. The grown-up Kevin, unlike me, never showed his emotions openly.
Please, let us stay for the night.
I didn't know what had happened, but there must be a reason they were here in such light clothing on a snowy day. They must have come all this way relying only on the address note I gave Kevin when he was little. It must have been difficult to walk this distance in the snow, carrying a child on his back. I was about to nod as if to say, of course.
Are you kidding me? I can take care of that kid.
Fred, who was supposed to be watching TV in the back of the house, came to the entrance with loud footsteps. It seemed he had overheard our conversation. Seeing him get angry after such a long time made me freeze. Even I, who had been with him so long, was scared, so the high school boy must have been terrified. Worried, I looked at Kevin and the child. But Kevin, unfazed by Fred's demeanor, looked down and muttered softly.
I guess so.
He said, and then smirked. It was a hollow smile, twisting only his mouth, as if everything was as he expected. I felt anger towards Fred for causing such an expression on his grandson's face. No matter how stubborn and unforgiving he was, this was no way to treat his own grandson, who was innocent and once beloved. As I was about to protest, the child on Kevin's back said, "I'm cold," shivering. His hands and feet turned even redder, and his lips grew more purplish. Kevin's legs were trembling, struggling to hold the child any longer. Fred glared at the child on Kevin's back.
We need to go to the hospital first. If you're not going, I'll drive.
What? Oh. Then, with wide eyes, Fred silently grabbed the car keys and quickly headed to the garage. Though his words were harsh, it turned out that Fred was indeed worried about Kevin and the child. He always lacks the right words, saying he can't take care of that kid. He meant that we couldn't properly care for the severely exhausted child at home. That's just the kind of person my husband was. Only then, through my tears, did I notice Fred's urgency. Following his words, I urged Kevin to the garage. You did well to get here. We're going to the hospital, so you can relax now. I can carry the child for you.
No, it's okay.
Kevin looked surprised and then confused. He readjusted the child on his back and walked to the garage as prompted. Kevin seemed to have grown into a very responsible person. Always worried about the child, putting himself last. Even though he was shivering from severe frostbite. Reassuring him was my role in the car. Soon after, we found a hospital open at night, and Kevin and the little child were quickly seen by a doctor. The doctor said they were suffering from frostbite and malnutrition. Fortunately, because we brought them to the hospital immediately, their lives were not in danger. I was relieved. While Kevin and the child were treated in the warm hospital, Fred was not his usual self. He listened intently to the doctor, held their hands to comfort them, and visibly worried. Where had his usual stern face gone? While glancing at him, I waited for Kevin and the child to recover. A few hours later, after they received IV treatment, we were able to head home before dawn. In the car on the way back, I asked Kevin about the small child he was carrying. In the hospital, I had asked Kevin to fill out the forms, and he had written the name Luke in the child's name field. Luke is 5 years old. As expected, Kevin confirmed that Luke is his half-brother, which means he's another grandchild for Fred and me. Tentatively, I asked about their life at home, already hinted at by their scant clothing in winter. Indeed, Kevin said Molly, the new wife, was cold to him because he was from Mark's previous marriage. He was always verbally abused and discriminated against in daily life, including meals. He didn't even receive new clothes, and his school uniform was the warmest clothing he had. Mark, his biological father, showed no interest in Kevin, mostly ignoring whatever Molly did to him. Luke, the child of Mark and Molly, was cherished by them as a baby.
But they gradually stopped caring. Probably became too much of a bother.
They began to shift their responsibility of looking after Luke onto Kevin. They were always self-centered, unable to prioritize their children. Fortunately, Kevin, much older than Luke, cared deeply for him, likely taking care of Luke since his middle school days. It pained me to think that, despite being a teenager who needed care himself, Kevin had to tend to Luke. His earnest care was evident in how closely Luke clung to him. During the drive, Luke, unaccustomed to the car or perhaps the situation, didn't speak a word. Clinging tightly to Kevin, a clear sign of their bond, I finally asked why they had come to our distant home in the dead of winter. Kevin was initially hesitant to explain, but, sensing my concern, he gradually shared their ordeal. Shockingly, Mark and Molly had left the children alone to travel far away, leaving little food and money. Their absence during the winter break worsened the situation. They had absolutely nothing to eat, and Kevin feared that both he and the young Luke would starve if things continued as they were. With schools closed and not wanting to impose on friends, Kevin felt he had no one to turn to. Driven by desperation, he decided to come to our house, tearfully recounting their plight.
Why didn't you contact us before now?
Fred shouted at Kevin, his voice tense while driving. His guilt over not reaching out to Kevin and allowing Mark's tyranny, along with a sense of helplessness, was palpable. Understanding this depth of emotion required years of living with Fred. Fred, don't talk like that. Kevin, Luke, I'm so glad you turned to us in the end. To Kevin and Luke, Fred must have seemed like a scary grandfather. I reassured them, not seeing any fear on their faces. Perhaps because they sensed his genuine concern at the hospital.
I thought about contacting you many times, but I hesitated because of what Mom used to say, worrying it might be true.
Kevin looked guilty as he explained why he hadn't reached out to us. After Mark remarried, Molly frequently yelled at him, saying,
"You're not loved by your grandparents. You're a nuisance no matter where you go. So don't even think about relying on them."
I used to think it was a lie because my memories of you were always kind.
However, repeatedly hearing those words made him start to believe they might be true.
I remember being loved and well treated by you in my childhood, and now I can see that there's no way my grandparents would hate me. But until recently, I somehow felt unloved.
Molly had manipulated him into not seeking help from us. That's why you smiled when Fred shouted, isn't it? Kevin nodded. When Fred yelled at the entrance, Kevin's smile seemed to reflect a bitter realization, aligning with the harsh words of his stepmother, Molly. Hearing this, Fred looked even more regretful. Kevin expressed, through tears, that finally feeling protected by his grandparents gave him peace. Luke, perhaps influenced by his brother's crying or the release of tension, also began to cry. Upon arrival at our home, they immediately went to the prepared bed.
"It's warm, Kevin,"
Luke murmured, sniggling into the blanket, embraced by Kevin, both falling into a deep sleep. I felt a mix of love and sadness, tears rolling down my cheeks. Realizing they probably hadn't slept comfortably and safely like this for a long time. Fred and I wanted to keep watching Kevin and Luke's sleeping faces. But there were urgent matters to attend to. Once day broke, Fred took the car out again, with the medical reports to file a complaint against Mark and Molly. We prepared while waiting for their return. Weeks later, when Mark and Molly returned from their trip, they were arrested by the police who were waiting at their home. Initially, Mark accused Fred and me of kidnapping, maintaining this claim even when faced with evidence, reflecting how selfish and terrible he had become. At the trial, the face of Mark, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, had become even more severe than when we last parted. I wonder how things ended up like this. Did we, as a couple, make a mistake in how we raised him? Or was there some significant turning point in Mark's journey to adulthood? It might be too late to ponder these questions now, but seeing my son hurling harsh words in court made me realize we've reached a point of no return. For now, let's focus solely on protecting Kevin and Luke, who have been deeply wounded in their hearts. After discussing with Fred, we resolved to be thoroughly supportive and stand by our grandchildren. Eventually, Mark and Molly were arrested for child neglect, with the medical reports of malnutrition being crucial evidence. Our testimonies likely reinforced the decision. Suddenly, Kevin and Luke were left alone. They wanted to stay with us after their parents were arrested. However, doubting our capability to raising a neglectful son, we consulted Anna's parents. They expressed relief over their grandchildren's safety and concern for Luke, despite no blood relation. wishing to take both in. However, they expressed regret that it would be difficult for them to take in Luke, as there was no blood relation. They mentioned it would be cruel to separate the brothers, and therefore our home, where the siblings could stay together, was the best option. They also promised that they would help each other going forward. Moved by their kindness despite the wrongs Mark did to their daughter Anna, I found myself easily moved to tears. Hence, Kevin and Luke ended up in our care. Holding their hands, promising a shared life ahead, they showed bright, blossoming smiles. Initially reserved like shy cats in their new home, they soon warmed up to us. Kevin often helps out around the house. Despite the heavy snowfall this year, he has been eager to help with shoveling the snow. Young Luke, imitating what he sees, also goes outside with a shovel in hand. Luke, perhaps in the phase of wanting to imitate everything, copies everything his brother does. Fred, while grumbling, taught them how to shovel snow. Evidently delighted by their reliance on him.
Can't you guys even do this? Absolutely hopeless.
Fred grumbled with a stern face, his usual way of scolding. However, Kevin and Luke seemed to understand that it was just his way of hiding his embarrassment, and they would just smile and let it roll off their backs.
We'll get better than Grandpa soon, right, Kevin?
Yeah, maybe we'll surpass him by tomorrow.
Though my husband continues to be difficult, Kevin and Luke are growing fond of him, embracing his gruffness as part of their affection for their grandfather. I watch their endearing interactions as I prepared a day's meal. Dinner's ready, let's take a break. I call out loudly, and the three of them walk towards me, laughing together. What blissful days these are! Winter is nearing its end, and the season of budding flowers approach us. Warm moments are passing among the four of us.
My wallet was in your bag, you thief.
Myself, Susan shouted at me, rummaging through her bag with a glare. This happened during a dinner party at my fiancé's family home, celebrating the setting of our wedding date. Among the attendees, including both our families, was Susan, whom I find difficult to deal with. Ever since a greeting visit to announce our engagement, she had taken a particular interest in me. Since then, she frequently invited me to meals, often saying, "I'm a bit short on cash today, can you cover for me?" Or "I forgot my wallet, lend me some money," without ever paying for her meals. Moreover, she hasn't paid me back for any of the money I covered for her. Initially, I wanted to get along with her, but my distrust grew day by day, and I've been avoiding her as much as possible. Being accused of theft in front of my fiancé and relatives, I was in shock. The wallet she held was indeed hers, but I swear I didn't steal it. Susan, please, calm down.
What? You're going to make excuses now? I'll make sure to demand compensation for this theft.
She ranted, not letting me get a word in. Watching her, I couldn't help but let out a laugh. And soon the rest of the family started laughing too, leaving her dumbfounded.
What's so funny?
She demanded, turning red with anger. I decided to tell her the truth. I can't help but laugh at such an accusation, Susan. My name is Emily. I'm a 28-year-old office worker. I just got engaged to someone I've been dating. My fiancé, David, is a 30-year-old man, my superior at work. David has been supportive since I joined the company, listening sincerely to both work and personal matters, making him a trusted boss from the start. As we spent more time together, we started sharing more about our personal lives, developing mutual affection. Our similar ages and common interests also played a part. After a few years of dating, we decided to announce our engagement to our parents. Visiting my home first, my parents and sister warmly congratulated us. My sister, Sarah, is 7 years my senior. She's already married and has 2 children. She lives nearby and works from home as a translator. She finished her work early today to meet us.
Congratulations, Emily. David, please take good care of my sister.
Sarah said, smiling to David. She has always adored me since we were kids. And I love my wise and kind sister. On our way home, David complimented my sister, making me happy as if it were about me. You have a sister too, right, David? I'm looking forward to meeting her. I said so. David seemed troubled. I'm glad you think so, but my sister can be quite selfish and vain. I'm worried she might trouble you, he admitted reluctantly. It seemed he was hesitant for me to meet her. Nevertheless, I wanted to get along with my future self. Little did I know she would become a source of concern for me. When we visited David's family home later, his parents welcomed us warmly.
It's been a while, Emily, nice of you to come.
His mother, Anna, greeted me in a laid-back tone, and his father, Tom, smiled kindly. Although I had only spoken to David's parents at their doorstep before, our relationship was good. However, this was my first time entering their house, and I was nervous about announcing our marriage and meeting his sister for the first time. It turned out she was not home, which disappointed me but seemed to relieve David. Maybe he really didn't want me to meet his sister. Despite keeping his sister in mind, the conversation with his kind parents went smoothly, and I felt relaxed and enjoyed our time. David's parents were genuinely happy about our marriage, and feeling reassured, we began to leave. As we were putting on our shoes at the entrance, the front door suddenly opened, and a woman walked in, saying, "Hi there." Seeing her, David let out a
Well, David, what? You're leaving already? I just got home. Stick around for a bit,
said the woman blocking the door, appearing to be in her mid-30s, around the same age as my sister. However, she seemed more assertive and was wearing heavier makeup than my sister. I immediately realized this was David's sister, Susan. According to David, she's divorced with no children. Nice to meet you. I'm Emily, and I've been in a relationship with David. We're here to announce our engagement. When I greeted myself, all I got back was a nonchalant hum. When I looked at her, she was sizing me up with a judgmental gaze. Then, with a smirk, she asked, "So, Emily, how did you meet David?"
Hey, Susan. This is the first time Emily's meeting you. Don't start with such questions.
David interjected, visibly annoyed. But Susan kept on firing questions at me without paying him any mind, asking about my salary, noting my nice clothes and assuming I must be wealthy, and inquiring if I worked at the same company as David. Well, overwhelmed by her barrage of questions, I was at a loss for words when David stepped in to chide his sister.
Enough already. Can't you see Emily's uncomfortable? We're leaving, so please move aside.
David managed to pull me away from his sister, who glared at him as if he was getting in her way.
What's the big deal? If you guys are getting married, she'll be my sil, so I thought it'd be nice to chat a bit. Oh, right, Emily, let's exchange contact information,
she said, pulling out her smartphone from her purse. I was hesitant but eventually gave in, wondering if this was really the right decision. Susan, don't bother Emily too much. Even Anna warned her. Susan seemed bothered and went inside the house. I finally understood why David looked so gloomy when we were talking about Susan before. Unlike her brother, Susan was pushy and didn't listen to others. A complete opposite of my own sister. I was anxious about getting along with her, but still wanted to keep a good relationship with my future family, so I resolved to reply diligently to any messages from her. After we exchanged numbers, Susan started sending me emails frequently. Through our exchanges, we found out we worked close to each other and she invited me to lunch during our work break one day. I agreed, seeing no reason to decline. But when it came time to pay, Susan suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, what's wrong?"
Sorry, Emily, I'm a bit short on cash right now. Could you cover for me and I'll pay you back later?
She asked, without a hint of embarrassment. I was puzzled by her behavior but decided to pay for the lunch, thinking it was just this once. However, on another day, oh dear, I forgot my wallet. Emily, could you pay for me? Susan began inviting me to lunch frequently, always finding an excuse to have me pay for her share. And whenever I asked for reimbursement, she'd brush it off saying, "It's not a lot of money for lunch, right? Don't sweat the small stuff," refusing to take me seriously. The cost of a single lunch wasn't much, but as these invitations became more frequent, the financial burden on me grew. Months passed without Susan returning any of the money I'd covered for her, and my distress towards her only intensified. I realized it was best to minimize my interactions with her, and my desire to get along with her faded. Lately, I've been declining her lunch invitations and keeping my replies to her emails to the minimum. However, one day after work, as David and I were leaving the office together, I heard a familiar voice call my name. Turning around, I saw Susan waiting for us. "Look at you two, leaving work together like a happy couple," she said sarcastically, making David frown.
What do you want, Susan?
David asked, to which Susan replied with a bright smile. "Actually, I have plans for dinner with friends today, but I'm a bit short on money. Emily, could you lend me some?" I was frustrated by her audacity, having already lent her money before. "I'm sorry, but I have to decline. You haven't even paid back the money I lent you previously." I firmly refused, only for Susan to become upset, saying, "How cold can you be? We're family, aren't we? It's just a little money between families. Besides, you earn more than me," shamelessly justifying herself. I hadn't mentioned my salary to her, but she must have deducted it since I worked at the same company as David. I wanted to argue that I wasn't part of her family yet, but David spoke up before I could, scolding his sister.
Family or not, you shouldn't borrow money like this. Instead of going out for dinner, you should pay back what you owe to Emily. If you can't repay her now, please go home.
David, who do you think you're talking to like that? I'm your sister. Are you really siding with someone else over your own blood?
She switched from calling me family to a stranger, glaring at me as if I was the problem. She even started spouting some nonsensical theory, saying, "You know, in today's world, women need to have their own money too. Do you understand, Emily? Saying you can't lend me money is like admitting you're broke. David seemed too exasperated to even get angry.
What you're saying is complete nonsense. Emily, let's just go. You don't have to take her words seriously.
Without the heart to say anything more to Susan, we decided to pretend she was a stranger and left the scene. People from the office who were leaving kept glancing our way, making us the center of attention.
What? Hey, wait a minute.
Although Susan shouted from behind, we did not look back. After that, I occasionally received messages from her, but I was too busy with wedding preparations to do anything but send non-committal replies. Of course, I declined any invitations to meals, and since the incident of being ambushed in front of the company, I haven't met her. Amidst all this, the wedding date was successfully set, and a dinner party with both families was arranged. At my in-laws' house, David and I arrived at his family home shortly before my parents and sister. Susan was there too, but she surprisingly kept quiet and behaved herself, which felt eerie amidst the lavish dinner and celebratory mood. The dinner ended on a pleasant note, with everyone enjoying light-hearted conversations. When suddenly, after returning from the restroom, Susan started screaming, "What? It's gone! Where's my wallet?" Claiming the wallet she had put in her bag was missing.
Calm down. Did you leave it in your room by any chance?
Anna tried to soothe her, but it was as if she wasn't listening. I definitely put it in my bag. "Oh, I see, you stole it," she accused me, grabbing a purse near me and rummaging through it. Then, with a look of surprise, she pulled out a wallet from the purse. Her own wallet that I had seen several times before.
Look, just as I said, my wallet was in your purse.
She exclaimed triumphantly and then started accusing me again.
You stole it while I was in the restroom, didn't you? Pretending to be all innocent and then pulling something like this. I'm totally against someone like you marrying my brother.
Susan, please, calm down.
Planning to make excuses. What you did is theft. I'm going to demand compensation, so be prepared.
She continued, not letting me get a word in. However, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. That's funny. And as I started laughing, my parents and David also burst into laughter, leaving Susan dumbfounded. But then she became red with anger.
What's so funny?
It's laughable, really. You've said quite something, Susan.
Huh?
Confused by our reaction, the next to speak was my sister sitting next to me.
That purse isn't Emily's. It's mine.
At that moment, Susan's face froze.
What?
With sweat on her brow, she looked panicked. I then said, "My sister is stealing your wallet? That's impossible, right?" It was clear she had been looking for a chance to cause trouble. I hadn't brought a purse to the dinner, knowing she might pull something. The purse beside me was my sister's, and moreover, my sister couldn't possibly steal anyone's wallet. It was utterly impossible, because my sister has been using a wheelchair due to a condition since childhood, unable to stand or walk on her own. Both my in-laws and Susan had seen her arrive in a wheelchair at the dinner, and knew she hadn't moved from her spot since the dinner started, chatting amicably with our parents and in-laws. Likely, Susan herself had put the wallet in my sister's purse. The real question was when exactly Susan managed to sneak the wallet into the purse without us noticing.
Susan, you came over to greet my parents and me before dinner, right? That time, you were sitting in such a way that my purse was hidden behind you. I felt something off about your actions then. Did you put the wallet in at that moment?
My sister's calm observation clarified my suspicion. Unable to answer immediately, Susan looked around nervously, practically admitting guilt. Cornered with no way out, she groaned, "Ack." Then, in a composed tone, my sister continued to reason with her.
I've heard about your character from Emily. Despite being almost the same age as me, resorting to such elaborate harassment is unbecoming of a person. Please don't hurt my dear sister anymore.
Only then did I realize my sister was actually angry. She's usually gentle, but when angry, she becomes quiet and persuasive, which is quite intimidating. After being lectured and unable to retort, Susan was then scolded by my in-laws.
Susan, what are you doing? Accusing Emily of being a thief is beyond embarrassing.
Absolutely disgraceful. We've treated you and David equally. Where did we go wrong? Emily, everyone, we're terribly sorry for our daughter's actions.
Tom apologized to us. However, even seeing her parents apologize, Susan seemed unrepentant. The next moment, she stood up abruptly, glaring at me furiously.
What? You're all making me out to be the villain. I was against your marriage with David from the start. I hoped today would embarrass you into breaking up, but you had to ruin that, didn't you?
She lashed out, leaving us speechless with her audacity. But knowing her true feelings, David was furious. "Don't mess around," he shouted, making her flinch.
How dare you say such things? You've been trying to ruin our relationship. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to lay it all out right now.
What? Wait, what are you going to say?
She tried to stop him, but David, having reached his limit, didn't hold back. He revealed everything. How she never repaid me for the lunches I covered, how she ambushed us for money, and all her misdeeds. David also shared that she had been spreading terrible rumors about me in an attempt to break us up.
You would believe such words. Emily has been hardworking and kind since she joined the company, and I know her better than anyone. Family or not, there are things you just shouldn't say.
David didn't elaborate on the specifics of the rumors, but his anger suggested they were quite severe. Things like that happened. I was shocked, having heard this for the first time. David looked regretful.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to worry you with unnecessary concerns. No matter what she says, I believe in you, Emily.
His sincere words moved me deeply. Wiping away tears, I faced Susan. Susan, I've decided to follow David no matter what. Please take this opportunity to let go of your brother, I said, flustered or perhaps ashamed. She blushed and retorted, "Shut up, just you wait," before storming out of the house. After the storm passed, I felt a sense of relief. No matter what Susan plans, nothing scares me anymore. My love for David has only deepened through this ordeal, and I've resolved to trust and walk with him into the future. A few days later, the lunch money Susan owed me was returned through my in-laws. They had pressured her to prepare the money she owed me. Furthermore, we received a call from her ex-husband at my in-laws' house. It turns out the cause of their divorce was her spending habits, even dipping into living expenses. She had claimed to have paid the alimony she owed to her ex-husband, but it was revealed there was still a significant amount outstanding, and she had been defaulting on payments. Learning this, my in-laws disowned her, tired of her antics. Not only had she committed misdeeds against us, but she had also stolen money from her family before. It turns out that in addition to alimony, Susan had debt from buying luxury brands and frequenting clubs. According to David, she has been heavily into the club scene since her 20s and has often been admonished by my in-laws for it. Ultimately, unable to manage her finances, she even embezzled money from her workplace, which led to her recent dismissal. Days later, I received a call from Susan, who had been kicked out of her family home and lost her job.
I have no one else to turn to but you, Emily. Please, could you lend me some money, just a little?
She begged in tears, but of course, I refused. Isn't it a bit too convenient to ask now? Pay off your alimony and debts with money you earn from a legitimate job. I have no intention of involving myself with you anymore.
But, aren't we family? Let's try to get along from now on.
I did want to get along with you at first, but I don't wish to be family with someone who spends recklessly and doesn't think they've done anything wrong. After I firmly stated my position, she was still ranting about something, but I hung up without paying her any heed. Afterward, it was heard that Susan started living in poverty in a cheap apartment she could afford with her meager savings. However, she was chased by debt collectors and soon had to leave the apartment. It's unclear where she is or how she's living now. David also said he would never get involved with his sister again. A month passed, and we held our wedding without her presence. It was a joyous occasion blessed by many, creating unforgettable memories that I cherish. After the wedding, we moved into our prepared new home and soon discovered I was pregnant. Anticipating the arrival of our child, David and I are enjoying fulfilling days. We hope to continue living happily with our new family member and the days to come.
Grandma, help me.
Just after midnight, my middle school granddaughter appeared on the intercom. Outside, a hurricane raged with pouring rain and howling winds. Rushing to open the door and let my granddaughter in, I was shocked to see how thin and frail she had become, having not seen her for 2 years. Her clothes were tattered, and she was carrying a baby on her back.
Did you walk all the way here?
My granddaughter nodded slightly in response to my husband's question. Can I borrow $5? I haven't eaten in 3 days. My husband, shaking with anger, vehemently refused.
Absolutely not.
His strong denial left my granddaughter and me despairing, but then he took a surprising action. I'm Olivia. I'm a 65-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband, Bob, who is 3 years older than me. Our son, Noah, is 40 years old. He lives with his wife, Michelle, who is 10 years younger, their middle school daughter, Catherine, and their 3-year-old Lucy, in a condominium owned by my husband, about 30 minutes away from our place. Noah's first wife, Emma, passed away when Catherine was young, and he remarried Michelle 4 years ago. Michelle was a good wife, kind to Catherine, who wasn't her biological granddaughter, which comforted me. Catherine used to visit often, but we hadn't seen her for about a year due to her busy schedule with club activities and studies. However, Michelle kept us updated over the phone that she was doing well. Catherine, our first grandchild, is incredibly dear to us, and I fondly remember her childhood.
Noah's first wife, Emma, was frail, and doctors had advised against having children. But she couldn't give up the life growing inside her and gave birth to Catherine. Her health remained unstable, and tragically, she passed away like a candle burning out when our granddaughter was just 3 years old. Catherine grew up to be very kind, much like Emma.
Grandma, let me massage your shoulders.
Catherine, thank you.
Please always stay healthy, Grandma.
Before Noah married, we often took care of Catherine, raising her as our own. 4 years ago, Noah introduced us to his new wife, Michelle, a spirited and vivacious woman. He quickly became close with her, who worked at his favorite bar. Her flashy makeup and long nails raised my eyebrows, but hearing from Noah that she was kind to Catherine put my mind at ease. What made you fall for Michelle?
I've lived a serious life, but Michelle taught me how to enjoy it.
I see. Maybe if I had inquired more about what he meant on how to enjoy life, the subsequent misfortune could have been avoided. After their marriage, they soon welcomed another child, Lucy. Catherine adored her sister, who's 12 years younger than her, and took great care of her with evident enthusiasm. We were happy for our son's family's happiness. However, a year ago, Noah was laid off, leading to financial difficulties.
I'll find a new job soon, but could you help us out with some money until then?
I'm thinking of starting a part-time job, but we need money for the kids. Please help us.
We'll support our grandchildren, but we can't provide long-term assistance. Work hard to find a job.
Pleaded by my son and his wife, my husband agreed to give them $2,000 monthly for living expenses. Actually, that money was our savings for retirement, but that's not something we could say. We thought the bad situation would settle down quickly, but before we knew it, a year had passed. And now that I think about it, it was around that time that Catherine stopped coming to our house. Then, on that stormy night, an unbelievable event occurred. With the storm raging outside, we had closed the storm shutters early and stayed indoors. Around 1 a.m., as we were dozing off in bed, this shocking visit happened. I was awakened by the repeated sound of the intercom. Who could it be at this hour?
Ringing repeatedly in the middle of the night must mean it's something serious. I'll come with you.
Suspicious, we checked the camera and were shocked. There was our granddaughter Catherine, crying on the screen.
Grandma, help me.
Catherine, what's wrong? My husband and I rushed to open the door and were stunned to let our granddaughter in. After a year, she had become thin and frail, her clothes tattered. She was drenched from the wind and rain, covered in grass and leaves. Upon closer inspection, to our astonishment, she was carrying Lucy on her back. Lucy was sound asleep, but like Catherine, she was frighteningly thin. Despite being almost 3, she looked like a baby due to her small size.
Did you walk all the way here?
Catherine nodded affirmatively and shared the circumstances she found herself in. We were left speechless by the shocking details she revealed.
Can I borrow $5? I haven't eaten in 3 days.
With the school closed and no lunch provided, Catherine hadn't eaten. She had been surviving by feeding Lucy bread and bananas, with the $5 given by her parents every 3 days. But then she was out of money. With her parents not returning, a desperate Catherine turned to us for help. My husband, trembling with anger, vehemently refused.
Absolutely not.
Hearing his firm denial, I was at a loss. Catherine hid behind me, cowering at my husband's terrifying expression. He had always been mild-mannered. He had never been this angry since we got married. You mean you won't even lend her $5 when she hasn't eaten anything? Snapped out of it by my words, my husband's expression softened. With tears in his eyes, he gently stroked Catherine's head, showing a rarely seen sadness.
I'm sorry for startling you. I meant we won't support Noah and his wife financially anymore. Catherine, you don't have to worry about money. Stay here with us.
That's good. You look so scary. I was shocked.
Sorry, I just lost it for a moment. I can't forgive them for putting our precious granddaughters through this. Catherine, Lucy, don't worry about anything anymore. I'll protect you from now on.
Relieved by my husband's words, Catherine, however, seemed puzzled and did not respond.
But Grandma, you and Grandpa hate me, right? I'm a nuisance, right?
Confused by her sudden words, both my husband and I were baffled. Why would you think that?
Because Dad and Mom told me you hated me.
What are you talking about? That's impossible. Catherine, you are our treasure. We've always wanted to see you. Comforting her gently, my husband also nodded in agreement. Then, Catherine broke down, crying and hugging me. Believing her parents' words, she must have been carrying the burden of fear, protecting Lucy on her own. We wrapped sleeping Lucy in a soft towel and laid her on a cushion. I handed Catherine a towel and, once she had calmed down a bit, offered her some warm cocoa.
I haven't had something this delicious in a long time.
Just then, Lucy, who had been sleeping all this time, woke up, looked around curiously, and asked, "Big sis, where are we?" Having only been here as a baby, Lucy had no memory of our house.
This is Grandpa and Grandma's house. They'll protect us.
Reassured, Lucy smiled warmly. Seeing both of them relieved, I urged Catherine to take a shower to wash off the dirt, and when undressing, I saw bruises all over her body. Her arms and legs bore marks as if she had been pinched, and scars resembling burns. When asked what happened, she said it was done by Michelle.
She said she didn't like my beautiful skin and would hurt me.
How could she do such a terrible thing? I cried, seeing Catherine's painful wounds. As she gently wiped away my tears, Catherine looked down and said, "I'm sorry for bringing up such a topic. You've done nothing wrong. Rely on us more." I comforted her. Catherine nodded and took a shower. Soon, Lucy said, "Grandma, I'm hungry," so I prepared a meal with what I had, and they ate voraciously. Watching Catherine gently wipe Lucy's mouth with a tissue after she spilled her food, it was clear she has always been tenderly caring for her. As they settled into the bed laid out in the guest room, they exclaimed, "It's so soft, this feels nice," before quickly drifting off to sleep, their breathing deep and steady. Watching my granddaughters' sleeping faces, my heart was filled with an increasing sense of sadness. What kind of hardships must these children have faced? Poor things. The next day, I took them to the hospital to check their health, and they were malnourished but thankfully had no serious illnesses. But Catherine's bruises might leave scars. I regretted not noticing sooner. Then my husband and I decided to visit our son, Noah's home. Both of us were angry, especially my husband. After ringing my son's doorbell with no answer, I thought he wasn't home, but then Noah finally appeared, his face groggy from sleep. Realizing we had come to visit, his eyes widened in surprise.
Mom, Dad, what's wrong?
Do parents visiting their son's house mean there's some trouble?
No, it's not like that.
Despite his confusion, we entered to find a mess and the smell of rotting garbage. Noticing our dismay, Noah clicked his tongue and muttered under his breath.
Catherine didn't clean up.
You had Catherine take care of even the trash. Noah covered his mouth, his expression one of having accidentally spilled the beans. My husband glared at him. Just then, Michelle, who seemed to have been sleeping, woke up. Her hair was a mess, her shirt stretched out at the neck, revealing her undergarment. Makeup smeared around her eyes, making them pitch black, clearly not having washed her face. Seeing us, she looked surprised, and at the same time had an unhappy expression on her face.
It's common courtesy to call before visiting someone's house. This is such an inconvenience.
So neglecting your children and sleeping past noon is your idea of normal.
That's...
Michelle was at a loss for words after my retort. Then my husband spoke up.
By the way, where are the kids?
Hearing him ask intentionally, Noah and Michelle looked at each other, seemingly unaware that their children were missing. However, Michelle, noticing the absence of the girls' shoes at the entrance, suddenly looked distressed.
Right. Catherine took Lucy to a friend's house, always doing whatever she wants, such a troublesome girl. Forgetting all we've done for her, even though she's not our own.
Exactly. We feed her. And she doesn't even help around the house.
Hearing the worst parents start to badmouth Catherine together, I felt a boiling rage inside me.
$5 was their meal money for 3 days.
Catherine was only feeding Lucy, barely eating herself. It's too cruel.
It's all because your son doesn't work. We have to save wherever we can. It's justified.
Yet you both look well fed while Catherine and Lucy are wasting away. It's clear you've been squandering the money on yourselves. According to Catherine, Noah and Michelle lived a lazy life, spending the money sent by my husband on drinking and gambling. This seemed to be their idea of enjoying life when he brought Michelle home. All household chores and child care were dumped on Catherine, resulting in many days she couldn't attend school because she had to babysit.
How did you know all this? We kept Catherine from you.
Catherine, desperate to feed hungry Lucy, came to our place seeking help in the midst of the hurricane. Where the heck were you two, leaving your kids behind?
Wherever we were is none of your business.
Drunk, I suppose. Their suffering is on you. Can't you even take care of your own kids?
They're my kids. Old man, stay out of parenting.
Noah flew off the handle, while Michelle stood by, smirking without any sign of remorse.
I'll sue you for taking my kids without permission. Send more money if you don't want police trouble.
When Michelle shouted at us, A loud voice came from behind.
It's you who'll be sued. I'll tell the police everything about how you treated Lucy and me.
Catherine, holding Lucy, had arrived unexpectedly. Catherine desperately wanted to say something, so she used the $100 we left for emergencies to call a taxi.
I've come to say I'm leaving to live with Grandpa and Grandma.
You think the police will believe a kid?
I'll be the witness. We have a medical report of the injuries, too.
Catherine's a stranger, but Lucy's my daughter. Come here, Lucy.
Michelle tried to take Lucy, who clung to Catherine and said, "No, I hate Mommy. I want my sister." Michelle was stunned, rejected by the daughter she never showed love to.
No more remittances, and I'm selling this house, which is under my name. We're cutting ties. Get out.
You'll regret abandoning these kids. Realizing their desperate situation, they pleaded for forgiveness.
Dad, we've nowhere to live without this house. I'll really look for a job this time.
I'll take care of the kids. Please forgive us.
It's too late. We can't trust you two anymore.
Give us a chance to change.
You will pay for your crimes. Don't ever contact us again. Understood. Leaving them begging, we took the kids home. Noel and Michelle were arrested for their abuse. Neighbors testified that it was always Catherine who took care of Lucy, and when she went to school, Lucy was left outside. Noel and Michelle have gone behind bars and won't be coming out for a while. Even if they get out, rumors of their terrible words and actions towards the children have spread, making it clear they'll struggle without anyone willing to speak to them. We adopted Catherine and Lucy, and then we demanded $1,000 a month from Noel and Michelle for the care of their two children. We intend to save that money for Catherine and Lucy's future. Catherine, kind and helpful around the house, dreams of becoming a doctor for Lucy's sake. Surrounded by our lovely granddaughters, my husband and I live happily.
How long are you planning to live?
Even if the love had completely faded, could someone really say such a thing to their wife, who had just been given a 6-month prognosis? I was beyond angry and shocked. I was utterly dumbfounded. What? You do realize the prognosis is yours, right?
What?
My name is Julie. I believe aging gracefully is an eternal theme for both men and women. I've turned 60, but I haven't forgotten to stay stylish as a woman. Not for my husband. When I look in the mirror and see that my hair, makeup, and outfit are all on point, it lifts my spirits. At work, people are surprised to hear I'm 60 and say, "You don't look it," which is nice to hear. The relationship with my husband has already gone cold, and I often ask myself why I married such a man. I'm working hard in the editorial department of a comic book publisher. My husband isn't a big earner, yet he opposes me working. Seeing him confidently saying men hunt, women do chores, just makes me sigh. It's like he's time traveled from the Stone Age, not just showing vestige of the past. I want to tell him that even in the animal kingdom, it's the lionesses that hunt. I find my work rewarding, advising aspiring young cartoonists with big dreams, and thinking up compelling characters and intriguing stories. The 60s are the new young. The idea that turning 60 means old is outdated, I think. But my husband is different.
When will you stop working? You're already 60, which could have meant being abandoned somewhere in another environment.
I was furious, but I backed down because my husband never yields in an argument. What error are you talking about?
I won't forgive you if you neglect housework for work.
He seriously believes housework is a wife's job. Doesn't my husband know the common sense of modern society? My husband is the worst kind. Not just a believer in male superiority, but also weak for young beauties. I graduated from college and landed my current job. I dreamed of becoming a cartoonist until high school, but gave up due to lack of artistic skill. That's why I want to support those chasing their dreams. I get so engrossed in work that before I knew it, I was 40. I was approached by relatives with a marriage proposal, and I too had dreams of married life. Marriage is crucial in life. One shouldn't rush it. However, fearing I'd remain single forever, I panicked and agreed to meet my now husband, George, at 41. Back then, George hid his true nature, acting like a kind gentleman. Since we were both over 40, neither of us planned to quit working, so we have no children. My parents, in their 80s, unlike my husband, are attuned to the times and never pressure me for grandchildren. Many women want children but can't have them. My parents understand that pressuring for grandchildren or asking about kids can be burdensome. Lately, my husband has been frequently using his smartphone and whispering on calls. I suspected infidelity, but felt no anger, perhaps a sign my love has completely cooled off. Once, my mother-in-law, Nancy, who lives nearby, visited us. Her husband, Ron, passed away 3 years ago, and now she lives alone. Nancy is 85 but always carries herself with authority, and even my husband can't stand up to her. It's not out of respect, though. It's probably for her money.
That old lady is so cheap. She must have around $200,000 saved up. I'm an only child, so I'll inherit everything. I wish she'd hurry up and kick the bucket.
I couldn't believe my ears at such an appalling statement. There are things you should and shouldn't say.
I need to be nice to her, even if it's just pretend. Or she might do something crazy like leave all her money to a charity in her will.
Just then, my mother-in-law, Nancy, appeared from the next room.
Sorry for being so cheap.
Mom.
My husband turned pale and lashed out at me.
Idiot. Why didn't you tell me she was here?
Keep it down, don't yell like that. You're disturbing the neighbors.
With no excuse for his insults, my husband just hung his head in silence. While my husband was taking a shower to get away from her, my mother-in-law asked me,
How long has it been like this between you two? This seems more serious than just a rough patch.
I just smiled wryly and said, Can you tell?
Julie, if it becomes unbearable, divorce is an option. There's a saying about the suffering of having to deal with someone you dislike, and I suppose the agony of having to meet someone you don't want to see is unbearable. Living with someone you hate is tough. You don't have to consider my feelings.
Her kindness touched me deeply. She's so knowledgeable and cultured. It's hard to believe she's related to him. Maybe my husband really did time travel from the Stone Age. He had a health checkup at work this year, and apparently, there were some concerns. Maybe it's his age, 61, or his unhealthy lifestyle taking a toll. He often comes home late and drunk. He says he was out drinking at a bar with colleagues, but I know he's been going to strip clubs. Never underestimate a wife's intuition. He went for a follow-up at the hospital, and one day, we got a call from there. The doctor said, "Before I talk to him, I'd like to discuss something with the family first." It felt like a scene from a TV series, and I had a bad feeling. What the doctor told me at the hospital was shocking. 6 months to live. The prognosis of my husband's 6-month life expectancy sent a whirlwind of emotions through me. I was surprised at my lack of shock, felt a bit of pity, and even a sense of relief, which I then berated myself for as being heartlessly cold. A normal wife would be devastated to hear her husband had only 6 months to live, and there I was, acting it out. Could there be some mistake?
Unfortunately, you should prepare yourself. Whether to tell him depends on his personality, and you know your husband best.
What about his personality?
If he's the type to despair and act recklessly, breaking the news suddenly is dangerous. But if he's optimistic and strong-willed, it might be better to tell him.
It was clear that hearing he had only 6 months to live would drive him to despair. Yet continuing to visit strip clubs and drink, oblivious to his condition, is not good either. I came home feeling gloomy, but concluded that I should tell him. That night, when my husband came home, I said, "There's something important I need to talk to you about."
What is it now? You know I'm busy.
I'm busy too.
You're just making yourself busy. If you hate being busy, just quit your job. Really, it's shameful for a man to have his wife work. It makes it seem like I can't earn enough.
I was taken aback by his outdated views. He seems unaware that most households now have both partners working, and stay-at-home wives are less common. I went to the hospital today.
Hospital.
Listen carefully, please.
Stop beating around the bush. I'm telling you, I'm busy.
In frustration, I blurted it out. I heard 6 months to live. He looked at me seriously for a few seconds, then laughed, covering his mouth.
6 months to live.
Yes. Calm down and don't do anything rash.
Idiot. Who's going to be rash? Don't be so full of yourself. Don't underestimate me.
It seemed he was indeed shocked, as his words were nonsensical.
Well, it's probably karma, given usual behavior.
I was surprised he was aware. So you should really cut back on the drinking.
Shut it. Drinking is part of the job for a businessman. You women think it's all play. I'm going to keep going out.
You should stop. Come straight home after work. Then he smiled broadly.
Wait. Don't tell me you want more time together because of the 6 months to live.
I hadn't thought of that, but I played the part of a dutiful wife. Of course, I want more time, just the two of us.
Don't be silly. I'm not that free.
George. Despite the gravity of the situation, he cut me off.
That's it. End of discussion. We're done here. Time is money, and I can't waste it on pointless chatter with you.
I was astounded at how easily he could hurt someone. But considering it might be a shock reaction, I said nothing more. Worried he might be down, I checked on him in his study. He was on a call.
Suzanne, it might be bad luck to say it, but my wife got the news at the hospital today. 6 months to live. Didn't catch the disease, but it's terminal, probably cancer.
I couldn't grasp what he was saying at first.
Just endure half a year. She's got life insurance, and Mom is 85, so she'll be gone soon. After the wife kicks the bucket, Suzanne, let's live together. I want a do-over in life.
I was shocked. He had a terrible misunderstanding. But hearing his conversation with Suzanne, my anger peaked. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. There's a limit to how much you can mock someone. I couldn't forgive him for even speaking that way about his own mother. In a chilling voice, I muttered, "Fine, live with your misunderstanding. Though for you, a lifetime is just 6 months." After our talk about his life expectancy, he didn't just come home late. There were many nights he didn't return at all. Claiming to be on business trips, he even went on vacations. I was appalled. My husband started dressing flashily, buying expensive watches, and splurging daily. He's also been buying lots of gifts. He doesn't have money to spare. Is he counting on the life insurance after I die? That's just low. 3 months have passed since the life expectancy announcement. Seeing my husband looking pale, I asked him, "Are you feeling okay?"
I've been feeling sluggish and tired lately. Just climbing the stairs at the office leaves me breathless. Maybe it's my age.
You should cut back on the alcohol.
Shut up. I've said drinking is part of my job in sales. If all you can do is depress me, then just drop dead.
I was furious, but I deliberately didn't retort.
Nagging women are the worst. You and that old hack should just drop dead.
Behind my husband, spewing insults, stood his mother.
Old hag, are you talking about me?
Whoa, you scared me.
He glared at me with a fearful look, but his mother asked again.
Old hag, are you talking about me?
No way, Mom. I've never called you that. There's this annoying boss at work named Olga.
Olga, huh?
Unable to meet the suspicious gaze of his mother, my husband looked down. My husband, who seemed to want to complain about me not telling him his mother was there, just walked away. 4 months post-diagnosis. He's been coughing more, taking more days off work, and despite previously having high blood pressure, now it's low. He gets dizzy and almost fell down the stairs. Yet, he still goes on business trips, planning to spend his last days not with his wife, but with his mistress. But knowing he's romping around with a mistress while thinking his wife only has a few months to live, makes sympathy hard to muster. He complains of cold hands and feet even on warm days, and says he's in pain all over. If you're feeling unwell, You should cancel your business trips.
Don't meddle in my work. Those trips are the only thing I look forward to. I mean, they're important, and I'm the only one who can do them.
Should I call your office and ask your boss to excuse you from the trips? As expected, he exploded in anger.
Just try. I will never forgive you.
I had to suppress a laugh. I felt pity for my self-inflicted husband, but was conflicted about telling my mother-in-law, Nancy, the truth. She's been kind to me since we were newlyweds. Then an unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman I'd never seen before. Pardon me, but who's visiting?
My name is Suzanne. Nice to meet you.
Suzanne. Could she be my husband's mistress? The audacity to come to her home had me on high alert.
I'll get straight to the point. Please release George, your husband.
Release him? While conversing, I was honestly astonished. Even from a woman's perspective, Suzanne was stunningly beautiful, charming, with great style and fashion sense. I couldn't fathom why such an attractive woman would be involved with my husband. He's not wealthy, so it can't be for his money. Surely, it can't be true love either. So, is this a scam?
George is suffering. I think it's due to stress, so could you please divorce him?
I couldn't help but smirk at her audacity before replying. What you're doing could be against the law. Isn't it absurd to discuss such matters so openly with the lawful wife? Yet, she was undaunted.
People sometimes meet their soulmates after marriage. It's foolish to be bound by the formality of marriage in such cases. Life is too short after all.
I realized. Continuing this conversation might make me lose my composure, so I ended it with a smile. He's already been released from heaven. Whether he's going to heaven or hell, I'm not the judge to say. She looked momentarily stunned, then laughed brightly.
Judge of the afterlife, you're funny.
I'm not funny at all. By the way, how old are you?
I'm 29.
29, still in her 20s. It made my head spin. The age gap was more than 30 years. I couldn't hide my surprise. If you don't mind me asking, what do you do?
He visited the place where I work. He's incredibly kind, a really good person.
Are you with my husband out of genuine affection?
Of course, George is tough and skilled.
Stop. I glared at her with a smile. If you keep talking, I'll really strangle you.
Haha.
This is no laughing matter. Suzanne stared at me silently for a few seconds before speaking.
Meeting you for the first time today, you're nothing like I imagined. Honestly, I'm surprised.
Did my husband talk bad about me, calling me a witch or something? Suzanne laughed.
He never spoke ill of you. I just didn't expect you to be such a wonderful person.
I wasn't about to take pleasure in being complimented by his mistress, but I started to feel that Suzanne wasn't all bad. It's hard to like the mistress on principle, but I could see how such a woman could easily charm that fossilized, dried-up man. True love, but soon, the moment will come when your feelings will truly be tested.
What?
Her puzzled tilt of the head was quite charming. I harbored no regrets about my husband ensnared by this siren, but I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. It's been almost 6 months since the diagnosis. My husband looked pale and missed work again today, but seeing me return home full of energy, he sneered.
How long are you planning to live?
Even if our love had completely cooled, could anyone really say that to a wife who's been given 6 months to live? I contained my anger, maintaining my composure.
Really, you and that old lady are tough as nails. Hated by some, loved by others.
Forget about me. Just stop speaking ill of your mother. Suddenly, he exploded in anger.
Stop that. Who are you to tell me what to do? Oh, I get it. With your time running short, you've got nothing to lose. So before I die, let me speak my mind. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life.
Those were the words he should never have said. He had crossed the line. Anger surged within me, and I blurted out, "Is that your final statement?"
Final statement. Wait, you haven't written some weird will, have you?
Have you written a will? It's been 6 months since your diagnosis.
What nonsense are you talking about? You're the one with the limited time left. Have you gone mad because it's the end stage?
I was beyond anger and shock. I was utterly dumbfounded. What, the limited time is yours? You know.
What?
For a moment, he looked serious and stiffened, then sneered.
You should be hospitalized. We're not even on the same page here. Go to the hospital today.
With that, he stormed into his study. The next morning, he collapsed in the house. I immediately called an ambulance and informed his mother before heading to the hospital. After the examination, my husband, having learned the truth, was furious and yelled at me in front of the doctors and nurses.
Why didn't you tell me something this important?
I did 6 months ago.
Don't lie, because the one with limited time is you.
Recalling the conversation from half a year ago, my husband was bewildered. Back then, I never specified who received the prognosis.
So, you took advantage of my misunderstanding, you devil.
This is a hospital. Please be quiet.
Outsiders, back off. Are you all in this together?
He pointed at the doctor and nurses, becoming entangled. It was a chaotic scene, and my husband was almost hysterical.
That's enough. If I get hospitalized here, I'll be assassinated.
That's an exaggeration.
Shut up. I can't trust any of you.
He broke free from the nurse's restraint and fled the room. I had no intention of stopping him. I apologized on behalf of my husband for his rude outbursts to the doctor and nurses, then went home. A few days later, my husband returned home, looking pale as a ghost. After telling Susan the truth, she apparently broke up with him. I wondered if it was too much for her as I pictured Suzanne's face. It would have been better if it was just a breakup, but Suzanne was married. It's not uncommon for strip club workers to lie about being single while being married. Suzanne's husband was in prison and seemed to have been recently released. Caught in her affair, Suzanne had blurted out about my husband.
Help me. I'm being threatened to be thrown into the sea alive.
How am I supposed to help you from such a dangerous person?
You're so calm about your husband's crisis.
Which is ironic coming from him. Planning to flee the country.
I don't have the money for that.
It seems he had spent all his savings counting on the insurance money after 6 months. Frequent trips, or rather, vacations with Suzanne, probably meant he paid for everything, so it's no surprise his fortune dwindled so fast.
Please, can you lend me some money?
I don't have any, I replied coldly.
Then borrow it from Mom. She won't lend me any, that stingy old lady.
Why don't you borrow it from Olga?
Yikes.
Shocked like a comic book character, he glared at me.
That's why I tell you to let me know when she's around. Is this on purpose?
Well, you only had 6 months anyway. Oh, that was half a year ago, so your time must be almost up, right?
I was shocked by these cold words, and my husband was lost for words at his mother's statement.
Is that something you say to your own son?
How many times have you said that about your own mother?
My husband was left speechless by this retort.
George, you need to sincerely apologize to Julie. We'll talk after that.
But my husband, unable to let go of his pride, shouted,
This is my house. Get out. I don't want to see your faces anymore.
Julie, let's go.
What?
George, I am disappointed in you. I'm cutting ties with you. I will live with my daughter.
Daughter.
My husband has no siblings. I was shocked, thinking of a hidden child, but his mother said,
Julie is my daughter. Do you have a problem with that?
Nancy. My husband was dumbfounded by the unexpected revelation. I almost cried but managed to hold back. My husband and his mother were blood relatives. If my husband and I separated, she and I would become strangers. Yet, she called me her daughter. I had felt this since we got married. She had always treated me like her own daughter. Her affection was genuine. My husband, pale-faced, glared at his mother.
What nonsense are you spouting? It's between your real son and your daughter-in-law. It's clear who's more important.
Of course, without a second's hesitation, I choose my real daughter, Julie. A man who cheats and brazenly justifies it is not my child.
Feeling the unwavering resolve in his mother's words, my husband walked away silently like a ghost into his study. I quickly packed and moved in with my mother-in-law. Fortunately, I had a job, and as my husband said, Nancy had savings. With her advice, I officially divorced and completely severed ties. Despite his self-made misfortune, I wondered if my husband would be all right. Thinking coldly about whether the Thigs or the Reaper would get to him first scared me. Instead, I found myself worrying about Suzanne's safety. Whether this was the right outcome, I couldn't say. Marriage means strangers living together. Love is what matters most. When love fades, the end comes quickly. I pondered if this marriage was a mistake, but not entirely. I met my mother-in-law. We continued to live happily, like a real mother and daughter. My parents were initially surprised but understood everything after I recounted the tumultuous 6 months. Now I am happy. Happiness is not something given by others. It's something you must claim for yourself. Men often vow to a fiancé's parents, "I will make your daughter happy." But happiness is not something a man gives. It's found within oneself. My heart holds endless potential. I believe in my strength and continue to live.
I'm marrying your best friend. I haven't filed my marriage with you, and there's no division of property.
Guess what? I got myself a high-earning banker husband.
In front of me, my husband and my best friend were laughing triumphantly. I was shocked to discover my husband was cheating, but even more so that it was with my best friend. He proposed to me only because I was selected as a housekeeper candidate. I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. I guess they see me as a poor woman who just dumped me like a rag. You didn't know?
What's that?
I won't use sweet words like honey anymore. I decided to confront them with the truth. I'll make them understand that mocking others can bring major backlash. I'm Susan Anderson, 39 years old. 10 years ago, I met my banker husband, Dan, through a marriage agency, and he proposed to me. I was worried I wasn't his type, considering my plain looks. But Dan spoke kindly to me.
I looked inside your heart and decided to marry you. Marry me.
Moved by his words, I agreed to marry him. However, our marriage wasn't smooth sailing. Above all, Dan's mother didn't like me.
She's so plain.
She sighed during our first meeting. But Dan defended me.
Don't say that about the person I chose to marry.
So I tried my best to win over Dan's mother. Shortly before we started dating, Dan's father had passed away. Dan's mother complains, when Dan was depressed because his father was gone, she pushed him to marry her. Otherwise, he would have found a better girl. Seemingly unimpressed by my ordinary looks, she often spoke sarcastically. Watching TV, she'd say, "Such a cute girl. If only his father were still here. Oh well, Dan is just too kind, and that's why he was deceived." Yet, I kept ignoring her veiled insults. Dan was attentive and kind to me, and our marriage lasted for 10 years. One day, as Dan and I were shopping at an outlet mall, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind.
Hey, there. Susan, right? Long time no see.
Hi, Kate. The woman waving in front of me was Kate, my best friend from middle school. Kate was always so lively and cute. We used to hang out a lot. However, her family moved away due to a job transfer, and we hadn't seen each other since. Feeling nostalgic, we went to a nearby cafe to catch up. Surprisingly, Kate still looked stunning, hardly near 40. She was working as an office worker. But it seems she hasn't been lucky in finding someone to marry.
Marriage is all about compatibility, isn't it? I just haven't found the right person yet.
Dan was staring at a smiling Kate as if he could bore holes through her.
I had no idea Susan had such a beautiful friend like you, Kate.
Thanks. What does your husband do?
He's a banker. As soon as she heard the word banker, I thought I saw sparkle in Kate's eyes.
So, he's high earning, right? Susan, you've snagged yourself a great husband. I'd love to get closer.
Of course. Why don't you come over for tea sometime?
I'd love to catch up with you guys.
It felt like the conversation was steering in that direction, but maybe Dan was just trying to be friendly with my best friend. When she came over for tea, it turned out that Dan and Kate liked the same video game. They were thrilled and started playing together. From that day on, Kate started coming over often. Under the guise of playing games, she would stay for hours. And both Dan and Kate seemed to exclude me. When I was in the same room, they would ask me to run errands like buying snacks or cleaning the bathroom, clearly trying to keep me away.
Dan, you're so good at this game.
I'm honored to be complimented by Kate.
Kate seemed to be getting closer to Dan, and he was clearly smitten. My mother-in-law, who liked beautiful Kate, said,
"Oh my gosh, she's a beautiful girl, unlike Susan."
She welcomed Kate warmly, and her treatment towards me became harsher. Since reuniting with Kate, I've felt increasingly alienated. Hey, aren't you getting a bit too close to Kate?
It's nothing like that. Don't be jealous just because you're plain.
Dan wouldn't listen to my concerns. Kate even started sending me messages.
If you're too controlling, your husband won't like you.
The more they enjoyed each other's company, the more tired I felt. Dan's behavior became increasingly odd. Recently, he bought a game that could be played online, probably encouraged by Kate, and played it every night after work. That in itself was fine, but his muttered complaints whenever he lost in the game.
Stupid kids think they can mess with adults. Beginners shouldn't drag me down. Damn it.
I hated hearing his rants. Even though they weren't directed at me, just hearing his negative outbursts was subtly stressful. He never lashed out at me or took his frustrations out on physical objects. Still, whenever Dan started his tirades, I'd escape to the next room and put on headphones to listen to music. It was a way to cope, but it was draining to deal with day after day. Why does Dan spend so many hours every day on such infuriating games? However, it seems he's in a good mood when Kate logs in and plays with him. I shouldn't mind my best friend getting along with my husband, but I felt uneasy inside. Additionally, a younger colleague at his bank starting to get recognition for landing big contracts seemed to be accelerating Dan's irritation. Whenever I heard Dan complaining about his bank, I would nod along and say, "I see, that sounds tough." I'm not familiar with the banking profession, and any misguided advice could upset him.
Don't talk like you know it all.
But he wouldn't do the same for me. When I consulted him about a mistake I made,
Everyone is so useless.
he snorted disdainfully as if looking down on me. It seemed he had no intention of offering me comforting words. Feeling this, I focused on Dan and remained silent for a while. He looked uncomfortable and went to the bedroom. From then on, our relationship gradually worsened. He even began to criticize the meals I made for him.
Chowder and boiled vegetables again. I don't want to eat this country-style food.
Don't say that. You're already not getting enough vegetables as it is.
I don't want to eat old lady food. I'm going out to eat.
As the distance between us grew, so did Dan's frequency of contacting Kate. He seemed to be going out for tea with Kate often, and I found it unpleasant. Hey, are you going to see Kate again? You're married, you should think a little.
What's that supposed to mean? Are you imagining our suspicious relationship?
Trying to stop him only made his mood worse.
It's just game advice between friends, it's fine.
Kate said that, trying to reassure me, but my anxiety only grew inside. Dan remained arrogantly dismissive of my concerns. Somehow, he started speaking ill of others loud enough for people to hear. Once, we went to a diner for a limited-time steak special, and there was a father with 2 kids sitting next to us. The kids were genuinely adorable and friendly, greeting us with smiles, creating a warm atmosphere in the diner. While I was ordering, Dan seemed to be listening to the family next us and started mocking them to me.
Looks like he's a single father. Probably can't expect him to earn much.
Hey, what are you suddenly talking about?
Maybe his wife ran off. He still wears a ring, probably still hung up on her.
A meanness was evident on Dan's face. Was he always like this? You shouldn't say things like that so thoughtlessly. Everyone has their circumstances. It seemed that my quiet admonition angered him. Next, Dan turned to speak to the children.
Is your mom not around? That's sad.
The father smiled wryly in response.
She passed away last year due to illness. Sorry to bring up such a gloomy topic.
I thought she'd left him. It's boring. I'm getting out of here before his bad luck rubs off.
Normally, you'd apologize for leading the conversation in such a direction. I felt so embarrassed my face could have caught fire. How could he say such things? The wait staff had overheard the exchange, and I couldn't bear to stay any longer. After apologizing to the family, we left the restaurant as Dan wished. Fortunately, we had just ordered, so the food hadn't been made yet, and we could cancel it. When we got home, I confronted Dan. Why would you say something like that? Didn't you think that was rude?
But it's the truth. Are you on the side of such a poor father? Or are you having an affair with him?
I was shocked by Dan's outrageous accusation. He had never been like this before. I was beginning to lose any vision of a future living with Dan. And as if things couldn't get worse, my mother-in-law, Nancy, slipped on a riverbank during her walk and broke her leg. The surgery was successful, but she had to do her rehabilitation at home. I was supposed to take care of my mother-in-law, but she behaved inappropriately toward me, her caregiver.
Hurry up with the meal. You're such a slow, Susan.
Nancy, walking to the living room can also be part of your rehab.
Oh my, are you trying to make a frail old woman walk? What a monstrous.
Nancy was immovable and always complained to Dan about me, which led to me being scolded by him when he got home.
Hey, Mom can't move right now. Aren't you being heartless?
But the doctor said she needs to move or her legs will stiffen up.
I don't want excuses. Just remember, if anything happens to Mom, I won't forgive you.
Dan, who should be the one helping, did nothing. Honestly, taking care of his mother alone was a huge burden for me. Dan started staying away from home more, using work as an excuse, saying my exhausted appearance was depressing. Even when I talked to Kate about it.
You really need to take good care of Dan's mom. That's his wife's duty, right?
She said that, taking Dan's side. My mental stress kept building up. After 6 months, I had lost 44 pounds due to the stress of caring for my mother-in-law. Thanks to my care, my mother-in-law was able to walk a little around the neighborhood. I was originally a bit overweight, but I had quickly dropped below average. The weight loss wasn't intentional, and with the added stress and lack of sleep, I looked more gaunt than thin. One holiday, I looked in the mirror and realized I needed to do something about my miserable condition. After taking care of Nancy for 6 months, I lost 44 pounds. So, I need new clothes because mine don't fit anymore. Could you look after Nancy next Saturday while I go shopping?
You're always home. Any clothes should be fine. You're not planning to cheat while leaving Mom with me, right? You should be thanking her for your improved figure.
I was speechless. Despite caring for his mother and managing all the household chores for 2 months, he objected even to me spending just one day to buy new clothes and get my overgrown hair cut. What am I to him? Am I supposed to feel this miserable without a single word of sympathy? With that thought, tears began to well up, and I started crying. Dan looked thoroughly disgusted and offered no comfort.
Stop it. You're making me sick. I'm leaving now.
With that, he left the room. And then, unbelievably, he came back with Kate. Kate was hanging on Dan's arm, looking down at me. Their behavior was clearly not just friendly. Then Dan dropped a bombshell.
I'm marrying your best friend. I haven't filed my marriage with you. And there's no division of property.
Dan raised his chin with a triumphant look, and Kate,
That's right. I've snagged the high-earning banker husband.
She looked pleased with herself. I was shocked that Dan was cheating, but even more so that it was with Kate, who was supposed to be my best friend. Obviously, Kate had cozied up to Dan to snag the banker. Kate kept showering Dan with flattering words to win his favor.
Dan, you're so good at games. It's even cooler when you totally beat those selfish kids. With your background, nobody can talk down to you.
Encouraged by her flattery, Dan became even more arrogant. And while Dan was away, Kate would cook his favorite dishes, winning him over completely. I had been puzzled by Dan's recent change, but now it all made sense. What do you mean we haven't filed for marriage?
Well, honestly, I only lived with you to have someone take care of the house and my mom. If a good woman shows up, I can switch right away. I have no marriage history and no division of property in divorce.
Dan seemed amused by his own cunning.
I actually wanted to kick you out as soon as I met Kate, but then Mom's accident happened, and I let you stay. But since you've defied me this much, maybe it's time for you to leave.
You haven't registered your marriage, so we're a first marriage couple, and we don't have to waste money on you, like property division. Dan's really smart.
It turns out Dan never filed our marriage certificate after our wedding ceremony.
I'll handle the marriage registration.
I was foolish to believe his word. After an argument with me, Dan filed a marriage registration with Kate. Naturally, since he hadn't registered our marriage, they easily became husband and wife. Kate decided to quit her job because of her marriage to Dan. Dan, flaunting it, took out the marriage certificate he had filled out 10 years ago and tore it up in front of me. Kate, why did you betray me? We were best friends, right?
Oh, honestly, you were just a foil. Someone like Dan, with his high income, is too good for someone like you. It's hard to find good men through dating services.
It seems I deserved someone better after all. So, please leave. I'm starting a real married life now.
So, it was only me who thought we were best friends. A quiet laugh rose from the back of my throat.
Finally figured out the reality, right? So, what are you going to do? You hardly have any money. Are you going to become homeless or live in a hostel?
Oh, how pitiful. Well, it was an inappropriate marriage for you anyway.
I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. You didn't know?
What's that?
I won't use such endearing terms as honey anymore. I decided to tell the two ecstatic people my truth. I have assets worth $1 million, so I don't need to worry about my livelihood.
Hey, it looks like you've finally lost your mind.
Dan burst out laughing, thinking it was just sour grapes. It's understandable, given what they thought of me up to now. I'm not crazy, and I knew you hadn't filed the marriage certificate.
What?
One day, while I was taking care of his mother and Dan wasn't around, I cleaned his room. Then, in the back of the closet, I found something like a wooden safe. It was an old model, and during cleaning, the lid opened, and I saw what was inside. The contents were a marriage certificate application with names filled in. Why would something like this be here? Hadn't it been submitted? It couldn't just be forgotten if it was secured like this. My mind was in turmoil. I couldn't confront Dan easily, and I didn't want to arouse suspicion, so I put the marriage certificate back where I found it. While I was figuring out Dan's intentions, I overheard him on a speakerphone call with his mother.
So, how are things going with her?
Yeah, I'll be getting rid of that wife soon.
Yay, you're smart. And to think she didn't realize the marriage wasn't filed. It's a good thing too, since our valuable assets won't go to such a wife.
I couldn't believe it. I had married Jan because I loved him, but he never intended to actually marry me.
Using taking care of mom as an excuse. Her hair's a mess, full of age spots, glasses, and no makeup. Honestly, her appearance has gotten even worse. She is not fit to be my wife.
Hearing those words from Dan chilled me to the bone. The voice coming from the speaker was too cold. This explained the mystery of the marriage certification found in the safe. I realized I was going to be discarded after being broken. With that thought, I bought a used computer and started improving my skills to become independent. While caring for his mother, I spent most of my time at home working on the computer. I bought programming books at the bookstore, read them thoroughly, and put them into practice. Soon, my desk was surrounded by books on programming languages. It seems I had a good affinity with computer programming languages like Java and C++, as I had progressed to developing apps. As I learned marketing techniques on social media and released several one-off games, they hit it off and started generating revenue. When I timely posted video tutorials on these games, ad revenue started rolling in too. Thanks to this, I began receiving programming contracts from companies. As my income exceeded the limits of a sole proprietorship, I formed a company under my name and managed the finances through it. App development doesn't stop at launch. They need maintenance and frequent updates, and handling these meticulously has been well received. Even while being heavily tasked by my mother-in-law, I had a goal and managed to persevere. I used online banking for managing my savings, so I rarely needed to visit the bank in person. I had requested the bank employees not to disclose my earnings to Dan, so he had no idea about the money I was making. I had enough money to leave this house and stand on my own. And half a year later, I faced the revelation about the unsubmitted marriage certificate from Dan. At this point, Dan was at a loss for words.
Jeez. I didn't know about any of this.
I didn't tell you, but after how you've treated me, I can't consider your feelings anymore. Maybe I'll talk to the bank about pulling my money out all at once.
Wait. If you do that, I'll get in trouble.
Dan tried to plead with me, but my heart was no longer with him.
So, you hid the fact that you were making so much money to deceive me. I'll sue you.
It's so unfair that you have all that money. I was practically taking care of your husband, so give me my share.
Both seem to have lost all common sense with their audacious attitudes. Your jokes are too much. Also, Dan, you and I were strangers to begin with. Even if we were in a common law marriage, your actions are all written down in my diary, and I've recorded this conversation on my phone. You can't touch my assets. With that, I picked up my bags I had prepared in advance and left the house, ignoring their clamor behind me. Afterward, I received numerous phone calls. From Dan, a mixture of cajoling and pleading.
Hey, you were trying to prove yourself to me, right? With that money, we could manage it more effectively together, right?
My best friend looked down on me.
Hey, since you're so plain, you tried hard. But give me $1 million as our wedding gift. I want this new designer bag.
And from my mother-in-law, constantly pressing me.
What do you mean you've been earning money? I didn't know a thing. Pay me $100,000 as compensation for your lies.
Listening to them was utterly exhausting. Please do the household chores yourself from now on. I won't assist you. According to you, I'm a woman who exploits men's weaknesses, so it's better if we cut ties, right?
What are you saying? Such a disrespectful, Susan.
I'm no longer your daughter-in-law, and I'm stopping my contributions to the household expenses. You'll just have to manage somehow. Good luck. During the time I cared for his mother, there were many expenses, but Dan hardly contributed. Life's standard would likely drop significantly without me. I wonder if his mother could endure that. Moreover, her recovery was not yet complete. Dan never even came to the hospital, so he probably doesn't know that his mother's muscle strength has declined considerably, and if she doesn't move enough, she could become bedridden. I encouraged her and persuaded her to walk as much as possible, but knowing her tendency to be lazy, Dan probably wouldn't bother, and Kate definitely won't help. Nancy needs to walk as much as possible. If she can't walk anymore, don't blame me.
Is that a threat? Thanks to you, Mom is good. Appreciate it.
I was mocked like this during the divorce. Dan probably thought it was just my sour grapes. I've given my warning, now it's none of my business. Later, Dan tried his hand at investing but apparently failed. I found out because he told me he needed $7,000 by 3 p.m. today for a margin call, or things would get really bad, and he asked me for a loan. After I firmly refused, he kept sending messages and calling.
Please, you have money, right? Help me out.
That's what happens when you invest without proper knowledge. My money isn't there to cover your blunders.
If you can make $1 million, I can too. There's no way I can turn.
It's astonishing how low he regarded me. I don't want to be mentally exhausted from any more involvement with Dan. I was determined to firmly reject Dan's demands as impossible.
At least lend me some money. I'll do it right this time.
No, there's no guarantee I'll get it back, and I don't want any more to do with you.
Don't be ridiculous. Acting all high and mighty just because you're Susan.
Frustrated by his yelling and emotional manipulation, I hung up in disbelief. I started recording part way through and consulted the police.
It's not uncommon for ex-spouses to be financially desperate and persistently involved. We'll step up patrols just in case.
He assured me of this, so I felt relieved for the time being. In terms of investments, not meeting a margin call leads to a forced liquidation. If the liquidation results in a deficit, it turns into debt. Sometimes, if the market continues to fall, it might be better to allow forced liquidation rather than meet the margin call, which would increase the debt if things worsen. If there's a chance the market will recover, it's better to meet the margin call, but Dan probably wouldn't understand that balance. If a forced liquidation isn't enough, it could turn into debt, though it might not. However, judging by his panic, I suspect he used money meant for essentials like living expenses. I also trade stocks with my savings, so I have some knowledge. Stock trading won't cause huge losses if you don't make strange purchases or sales. But attempting to make a quick fortune can turn into a gamble. Dan isn't the type to think long-term or see ahead. If I were still with him, I would have opposed and stopped him, but it's no longer my concern. A week later, considering cost reductions, I was thinking about buying a new car. However, when I logged into my online banking, it seemed like the balance was suspiciously low. Realizing something was clearly wrong, I headed to the bank. When I asked them to check my account at the counter, the staff rushed to the back. And soon, the branch manager appeared, looking flustered.
Susan, I'm terribly sorry, but upon verification,
the branch manager said, wiping sweat from his forehead, it appears that Dan has made unauthorized access to your online banking and transferred funds from your account to his own. Dan, having access to the account information, probably did this to cover his investment losses. He should know such actions would not go unpunished as a bank employee. The branch manager called Dan, who showed up with a sullen attitude.
Come on, that money is mine as your husband, right? The fact that you've been hiding it is what's really wrong. So I confiscated it. Any complaints?
You and I were never legally married. Don't start with convenient claims now. We're complete strangers. This is a crime of embezzlement of a customer's money.
What are you saying? Getting all high and mighty. Branch manager, don't listen to her. It was just alimony from the divorce.
The branch manager's angry voice echoed in the reception room.
what are you even saying? Don't you think that's outrageous?
What? Did I really do something that bad?
After Dan's egregious remarks towards me, a customer, the branch manager scolded him. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden any longer, and they had to call the police. That's when Dan finally began to panic.
The police. Why? I've been working hard for this bank.
You can't just do something like this and expect to get away with it.
The shouting continued in the reception room, and ultimately Dan was taken away by the police. Since Dan's assets couldn't cover the full amount, the bank agreed to cover part of the repayment. The incident was significant enough to be reported in the local newspaper, resulting in Dan losing his job. He had been respected in the neighborhood for his position as a banker, but now he was unable to stay at his home. With no money left, he moved to a cheap apartment while looking for a job. However, his name had been published in the newspaper, so any company that found the article turned him away.
If you had just kept quiet, by now I'd be rich. My career is ruined because of you.
I blocked his phone number, so now he sends endless resentful emails, which I ignore. Kate also keeps contacting me.
You're just making pointless trouble. Thanks to you, being a banker's wife is over. You're just looking down on us because we have no money.
I guess these peoples don't know the word deserved. Thankfully, the branch manager's sincere apology convinced me to continue banking with them. The fault lies with Dan, not the bank. I decided to forget about Dan and his group for a while and focus on my own work. I started investing the money I earned, and it appears to have gone well as it has now reached about $5 million. Work became too much for me to handle alone, so I began recruiting staff online. Soon, graduate students and skilled engineers started to join me. Among them was a single father I recognized. The same man Dan had once ridiculed at the diner. He had started engineering from home so he could take care of his children.
I'm still no substitute for their mother, but I don't want my children to feel deprived.
I apologized for Dan's past rudeness. He forgave me, saying that those words had spurred him on even more, but at the time, I was so embarrassed I could have died of shame. While busy managing my company, I unexpectedly ran into Dan as I was returning from a client meeting. He had changed so much that I didn't recognize him at first. He fell to his knees in the middle of the street when he saw me.
Susan? Is that you, Susan? Please, I need to talk.
Stop it, not here. Given the public setting, I agreed to listen to him inside a cafe near a police station. As it turned out, he was after money and a possible reconciliation. It seems Dan is having trouble even at his newly secured job. He couldn't escape his addiction to online gaming, which had led to his abusive language seeping into the real world. Despite my warnings, it had become a bad habit he couldn't break. Additionally, his daily meals were a disaster. Kate, obsessed with natural and authentic foods, turned out to be a devout follower of olive oil. She could only make greasy dishes with olive oil and cheese. Until now, what she had prepared were merely attractively arranged store-bought deli items. As a result, Dan had become obese and was covered in pimples. I heard that he had bad pimples when he ate greasy food, so I made him a healthy diet mainly of vegetables. Such high-fat meals are tough on older people like his mother and can lead straight to lifestyle diseases even in the young. Dan had become decidedly unhealthy. Kate, meanwhile, had been splurging and dining out excessively. Money was tight despite their efforts. And olive oil was no longer affordable. Kate started substituting salad oil and sesame oil, adding vinegar for health, which only led to bizarre taste changes. Kate, who had planned to enjoy a lavish lifestyle, was now completely distressed. Disgusted with her increasingly overweight middle-aged husband, she had an affair, but it was discovered by the cheating partner's wife, who demanded alimony. The financial strain meant Kate's in-laws were now in debt.
If you weren't gone, I could be enjoying a fun retirement by now. If only Susan had stayed, we'd be millionaires.
Kate faced daily sarcasm from her mother-in-law, and their marital relationship deteriorated. Kate's former beauty was nowhere to be seen. Despite his mother's potential to become more mobile with rehabilitation, her laziness worsened her immobility. After all her malice, did she really think she could expect financial help from me?
I can cook, and just looking at kids' food makes my stomach shrink. My mom can move, I have no money, and it feels like I'm being torn apart. Help me?
I do feel pity, but I can't forget being called a tasteless old lady when it came to my cooking. By the way, Kate's soup has a film of over 3 millimeters of oil on top of the soup, so the oil content seems pretty bad. No, I am neither a caregiver, a housekeeper, nor an ADM.
Then hire me at your company and make me an executive.
How shameless are you? I rejected Dan's pleading. Who would want to return to such a hell? Dan looked desperate.
Sure, I cheated, but it was just once, and if you round it down, that makes 0. So, I haven't cheated at all. Let's be husband and wife again. I'll dump her.
But obviously, someone who fakes submitting a marriage certificate speaks differently. I ignored Dan and left the cafe. Then, Dan started trembling and having convulsions. If I still cared about him, I might have panicked and called for an ambulance. But looking at him more coldly, I saw him saying it's painful, while sneakily glancing over at me. I was so appalled I couldn't say anything. When I walked outside, he hurried after me but retreated when I entered a police station. I had recorded our conversation just in case and sent it to Kate. He said let's be husband and wife again, but we were never married to begin with, and now your husband is contacting me.
What? That bastard. He's betraying me.
Despite her own infidelity, Kate was absurd in her own right. It seems the relationship between Kate and Dan, newlyweds, had quickly soured. I hired new security staff and deleted Dan and Kate's contact information. Now, thanks to stocks and investments, my company is operating smoothly without financial difficulty. The single father at my company seems to be managing well with his salary, covering his children's tuition and living expenses. Although I'm busy with work, I'm living a much more fulfilled life than when I was with Dan.
Susan, I need you to look at this program.
Okay, I'm coming. I put away the programming reference book that was worn out from overuse and headed to my employee's desk.